Ladies and gents, this is ML's Like Team Spirit. Today I have Roman back with me. Roman, welcome back.
Welcome. Hello, John. How are you?
Really well, thanks, Roman. Thank you for participating in this, and thank you for the support. Roman, you were with me last time, and you told everybody about the world's largest hackathon. 93,000 data geeks participating on the NASA Space Apps Hackathon. Now, you had a role in this as a mentor. So I wanted to bring you back today because I wanted to get into mentorship and some of what was in your role here. So we won't talk about the hackathon as such, but I wanted to get into what it was you were doing. So could you take us through, summarize the event again and what your role as the mentor, and then we'll go into what you had to do.
Yes, thanks, John. As you mentioned, 1.5 months ago, I had a privilege to participate in the Zurich NASA Hackathon. That was a local spin of global event run by NASA. And as I mentioned in the last episode, every year NASA is running one of the world's largest hackathons. And in order to organize this hackathon, NASA needs support from volunteers. And those volunteers can really help in organization, but as well in actually running the event. So this year I had a privilege and honor to actually work as a mentor in that event. What does it mean? It means that I've been supervising 2 teams, helping them to get to the best of their abilities in the super short time span, doing a little bit of like a light project management for them, and making sure that things are working correctly for them and they can deliver in those 2 days.
So there's key elements of what you just said here: working correctly and that they can deliver in the time frame. So you told me before that this was really like a 36-hour sprint to kind of deliver on data science work or project of some kind. So take us into the detail though, Roman. Like what is it? What did you find yourself doing to advise them? So I understand from before you told me this wasn't a coding one. So you weren't jumping in on the coding side, but you were giving oversight to the project. So can you take me back to like some of the key pieces without having to name the teams or anything, but just like from your memories, what would be some things you were saying? What was it you were trying to address to keep them on track?
So, maybe from the beginning, how this stuff looks like. Mentors and teams are assigned randomly. So I didn't know absolutely the people with whom I was to mentor before the event, and you have actually no control over that to select. I think it's some kind of matching tool which they are using to select who is going to mentor whom. And I had 2 teams which I mentored, which were on completely opposite spectrum of team character, let's say. Both one was on site, another one was full remote. One in first team, everybody knew each other before the event, and in the remote team, people were completely strangers to each other. So you've seen this totally different dynamics in the first team and in the other team. You could see really the struggles and how particular teams were dealing with some issues or challenges which they had. You had to somehow move them forward and help them a little bit to coin ideas, coin dynamics within the team, and bring them up to the best abilities they have. And there were, in both cases, there were super smart people on board. Just different team cohesion stage. Yes.
So where I'd like to take this, Roman, is what I've been noting here is you have the kind of the on-site group, the people who are remote from one another, but trying to keep them on track within this tight time frame. So I'm kind of creating the parallels between the working world here. So if you're like, team lead, sometimes you have the team next to you. These days, often you don't. So what would be some like tips that you don't have to say which team, but like what kind of tips were you giving to make sure people were on track, or when you were assessing the projects? I'm thinking here, what could be good general tips for like, team leads of the world or data science lead? What things could be happening amongst the people doing the work that maybe that you spotted? Like what things did you spot that maybe it's not a red flag, but like what made you feel like you needed to give some advice? What could a team lead be looking for?
So I won't say that who struggled and who not, because I don't want to pick any sides. But what I think, what is kind of like a very interesting way of looking at that is that when people come and meet, they are building this internal trust and cohesion matrix between each other. Yeah. So being having an ability to build this trust and gauge each other member ability to do particular tasks, this helps teams to self-organize. So what I mean here is that once people know each other a little bit before, or they start to get to know, they are building this internal representation that this team member is good for that particular task. This team member is good for that particular task. This another person could be trusted with this kind of task. Getting that stage requires time, despite wherever somebody is online or on site. Being online creates a little bit less interaction points. Yeah. So I think nowadays there are a lot of remote teams, and what helps, I think, is to meet frequently online, although it might be, and see another person, so that you have this component of at least seeing another person on site, not on site but online via video. This helps because it removes this picture and place a particular person behind it. Like you have a little bit more human connection, which is very important in solving tasks.
Okay, so more human connection, and then on the trust kind of idea, how did this work kind of in the hackathon context? So let me try. Do they all like assume roles based on their personalities, or to some extent did you have to try to give people certain tasks or something? Like how did you increase trust through clarity is what I'm thinking. Is like, so is that something you were helping with, or did they do it themselves?
The idea was that teams were to self-organize themselves. Yeah. So I was to facilitate this self-organization, and this is actually the way I also work normally in projects. I prefer once the teams are self-organizing, because then you're actually removing the micromanagement component from you as a team leader. Yeah. And in Hackathon, it was even more important because in essence, that was to be in 80% or 90% their job, not really mine fully. So you need to create this field for them to self-organize. Yeah. In the case of one team, the self-organization component was basically solved out of the box, because people really knew each other very well before Hackathon. So you can think about it in the terms that they had like a heads up start. Really, I'm looking. So I'm not comparing the teams. I'm saying that they had really heads up start, and it was easier for them to tackle particular things because they had internal trust and this task assignment map already built within their team. Yeah. Now, when you meet people who have not worked with each other, it's natural that they need to understand what another person is good at and and this requires time. It's a process which we need to know. We need to have time to learn what that particular person is good at.
Okay, yeah. So the self-organizing team concept means everyone plays to strengths, and you avoid micromanagement. If you're a team lead or management and mentoring. The parallel on the business side, from what you're saying, then, is the building of trust. Therefore, is something you need to focus on if you were building a team for the first time. It's like this happens to people. Like start off a data science division or a machine learning engineering team. If you're building a team for the first time, then you need to focus on how this all starts, trust building. And if someone new joins an established team, then you have to allow time for trust to be built, understanding of one another. That would be the parallel, what we can take from your mentoring side. Okay. On the solutions, Roman, I understand the project is 36 hours. You don't have much time for trust building, really. Get down to it. What was some of your role in overseeing these teams? Talking to them about their solutions. What input did you have as academic and business person? What could you add?
Last time we spoke, we used this nice parallel saying that people who are going to data science and the data problems, they are always super enthusiastic. And I think this is very true, not only in the hackathon world, but in general, in business world as well. Those are super optimistic people which would like to do things in a little bit different way. They are looking at data sources which probably were not touched earlier. And this enthusiasm component comes with a price, meaning that they are very, they would like to very often do things in a very complicated way. Because everybody is advocating, I don't know, some architecture, recurrent neural networks here, and then decision random forests there, and then XGBoost here, and whatnot. Your role, I see this as a senior person in the team or team leader, is to really gauge the ideas a bit. To say that you would like to use this, think about how much time it will take, because there will be this, and that problem on the way coming up, with a very uncertain outcome. Probably it's nicer to start with a less sexy solution at the beginning to see wherever it works at all. Because if it works at all, then we can see how far the data are allowing us to build a predictive model or whatnot. But usually, if there is some predictive power there, it should work also with the simpler models. Then those more complicated ones just are improving the efficiency. Same way as the missed data sets, It almost doesn't work. You have 70% of even on some logistic regression, but it works with logistic regression. So neural networks go to 95% or even more, but they are just more sophisticated. They are approximating this final solution in a little bit better.
So the key to this is the simplicity, keeping it in focus on a simpler solution that fits with the timescales that you've got, to then make sure you have at least something.
Exactly.
And then you say, well, here's what you do. You almost establish the workflow, and then you can go back and add in either a test, adding in, it's always an assumption that we're going to use the best algorithm in the world. But what you're really saying is go back and then test. You want to upgrade your algorithm. How does it compare against this rapid baseline that you've prepared and test them again.
You know, John, I mean, I'm always surprised to see every time I'm going to some organizations or corporations, I've been always surprised to see how many things are actually working with logistic regression or linear regression.
Yeah, I love it, Roman. This is a whole separate video. Like, I've got like 75 logistic regression books under my desk here because it's what I trained on. Generalized linear models. Shout out to generalized linear models.
Very powerful.
Yeah, exactly. It's my default as well for age reasons. But yeah, so something you said there, Roman, because I'm reflecting on what you're saying when you say like, test the algorithm, get something basic first, and go back. And you mentioned like, do you have the data for this? I think I will show full transparency. The data to support the project, I am also guilty, Roman, of, with my business things, I, add 2 days for data processing as contingency because I just know that that's what happens. But I will say it's extremely difficult to forecast, like, do I have the right data for this when you've never really engaged with that data set? So it's just a lesson that never gets old. I still have projects where the 2 days contingency is not enough because it may require not just what distributions do I have in this data or what can I see, but if something is missing or strange or shows some systematic weird distribution that looks like it was system generated, it requires you to go back to the business side. So like, well, how was this data created? Can you just explain this? And before you know it, you're mapping like data sources and things that maybe you weren't expecting. So this kind of, is the data good for this? Is a really good question.
Is the data not too complicated as well for that particular task? So, I mean, I can bring one example from Hackathon. There was one of the members from one of the teams had an idea to use satellite images for estimation of one thing. And we've been sitting there, and the person was explaining to me the reasons or what he would like to use and what not. And the very first moment I heard satellite images,
yeah,
this warning blob blinked in. Yeah. And why it blinked in? It's not because that was a bad idea, because that was super good idea, but not for the time frame which we had. I know that satellite image processing is actually super difficult. And I know it by chance because my colleague downstairs, when I was doing PhD, was working on a machine learning model to find rooftops. And it took him a few years to get that stuff working. Yeah. This is a complicated stuff. Yeah. And I mean, the more you've seen, it allows you to create this internal gauge of, oh, this will be that difficult, that will be that difficult, yeah. And we still make mistakes at the end, very often, yeah, even with that.
So Roman, do you have any tips for so they were lucky they had you, yeah? You did your PhD, and someone a few desks along was working on a similar problem. So you have you actively seen this, and then that makes your internal gauge stronger. For folk that maybe like I'm obsessed with data science leadership, Roman. So if you're a team lead, you may not be the most technical person in the world. You may be very capable with data, but maybe some of these sorts of things, your internal gauge may not be well built. Like, what are some tips for people in like either project management or lead positions where maybe they didn't ever do this type of data science? Like, what can they do, or how can they improve their gauge, or just understand what's involved?
I think the best nowadays, the best approach would be to try to do it yourself, to see how difficult it is really. And the bar now got very low because of this advent of large language models, all with different types and flavors. You can build a scaffolding for ML model super quickly, and then this will help you to build a bit of a understanding how difficult it is. Not please, but also those outputs from LL models, they have to be also treated with a bit of a grain of salt. I've been having a discussion with Gemini 3 since 3 days, and apparently about one topic, and apparently it also can bring you to some misleading places. Yeah, so one has to a bit learn and touch the subject. That's my advice.
Got it. So if you were a leader, maybe you weren't technical or you didn't code for a long time, and you're managing these enthusiastic data science groups, you're saying that it's kind of key is keeping yourself exposed to current developments. Do your own research. So would it be correct? Take the case of the satellite data. I never really worked on that. I understand computer vision is very, very technical field. I would just be able to go off, do something basic myself, from some basic boilerplate code. I suppose even I could just research, like look at projects in this space. Like, are my team proposing something that is state of the art? Often they like to grab things that are like the best, versus something that looks like a more practical solution. I suppose there's just trying to do your own research on top of a proposal that you've got. This is like, to me, this would be 30 minutes desktop work. Like, are they just recommending something that is done for the first time ever, or a sort of a well-established solution for this type of data and this type of problem?
And I think with that, AI, for instance, can tell you wherever the timeframes are realistic and what kind of issues you can expect down the line. Of course, it can be still wrong, but.
Roman, last question. When you're on the hackathon, then you've got this 36-hour time frame, and the guys and girls are mapping out what they're going to do, and you talk through like the simplest solution wins. Get something working first so you can finish, so you can actually participate. Is there a piece of it that you found? Which piece can you kind of make go quickest? So when you're in simplify mode, which piece can go fastest? Like, which piece could you help them optimize quickest? Is it like the early parts with, data processing, or is it some other part at the end of the process? Like, what part did you find yourself talking about? Like, here's where you shorten it first, and then some of the other pieces follow, or is it like the other way around? Is there any sort of memories you've got as to like which piece in particular?
So what probably helps the most is to add a little bit of this business flavor on top of that. Why you are doing that stuff? What is the utility behind this model? Even if it's simple, even if maybe it's even not correct fully, but what is the utility, or something which business can see as, there was this expression where they can smell the money behind that particular thing. So but the money is actually the metric of utility, wherever it's from customer point of view or internal savings point of view. So that's probably the thing with what I helped the most teams.
Good, Roman. I've been summarizing this because we're at time for this interview. So thank you for doing this. Let me recap. So mentoring and leadership. What I got from you is the learnings out of the hackathon. There were original team setup. You're kind of, as a leader, you're dealing with the trust cohesion matrix. It can manifest in different ways depending on whether you're a remote team or an on-site team, and you have to adjust what you're doing to make sure that team can do its job. We moved on to how did you keep their eyes on the prize? So you've used the utility of the project. So I think you're saying, simple solution wins, but to keep focus, always reminding of what is being solved will avoid too narrow focus on an element of the project. So if you kind of keep the reason for doing it in the discussion, we avoid the rabbit hole of, like, I don't know, coding too much of a difficult algorithm or something like this. And then for the leads that maybe are less technical, but have to oversee these teams doing wanting to do this great work. Key things are keeping your skills up, trying to at least explore basic versions of these projects so you can get a good intuition as to what it takes. And if you can't do it yourself, at least keep up your desktop research as to innovations in computer vision, predictions, natural language processing. If you kept a good knowledge up over these subject matters, your internal intuition would stay strong. How does that sound for a summary, Roman?
I think you got it.
Good. Roman, thanks for doing that. Ladies and gents, this was ML's Like Team Spirit.